Romanov.
You're listening to the CKNW Saturday Morning News with Jill Bennett.
Well, many people shake their heads thinking if I had only bought property in Whistler before it became popular, you'd be sitting on a bit of a gold mine. And a new report shows that, yes, that is true. Joining me on the line to talk more about Whistler real estate is Rudy Nielsen. He is the president and founder of Landcor Data Corporation. Rudy, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Jill.
No huge surprise that real estate tends to be a good investment in many parts of BC. But Whistler, this new report looking at anyone who bought in Whistler about 10 years ago, certainly nothing to be too upset about.
No, it was a good place to purchase a piece of property and get a good return on your value.
Seeing in 10 years, I think the figure was the value of housing has gone up 123%. Is that because of the Olympics or because the popularity of Whistler?
No, I think of it just, like British Columbia has gone up as a whole in the last 10 years, and Whistler was just part of it. But Whistler got to be a worldwide destination. I think the thing we've got to look at is that in the last 3 years, the Whistler holdings, or people that have bought in Whistler, went from 13 countries to 40 countries. So we've got people now from pretty well over the world. So like 3 years ago, we were looking at pretty well 13 different countries. But right now we have 40 countries in the last 3 years that have come in from all over the world, from Argentina to Finland. We've got people from Mexico. We've got people from the Caribbean. From Europe, we have 208 people that purchased in the last 3 years. So it's got to be a big international place for people to come and relax and to just enjoy British Columbia.
And what do you think was the driver behind that, behind getting it such international exposure? I know some people would say the Olympics, but I would almost guess that it's more to do with when we've seen it deemed the best ski resort in some of the travel magazines or some publications that are international.
It had something to do with the Olympics, but, I'm looking back at figures. I always compare Whistler to what happened in Expo. And Expo, we looked at sales, and we saw decline for 3 years after Expo, and then we saw what happened, and then we see what's happening in Whistler. Like for Expo, for instance, when they announced Expo in 1984, when they announced it, we had $8 billion worth of sales going through British Columbia. And then in 85, we went to 10. Expo year, 1986, we went to $11 billion. Then we went to 15, 19. By the time we reached 1989, we were doing $28 billion worth of real estate in British Columbia, which is about 144,000 sales, which is an increase of 228%. So I kind of look at Expo, what happened there. We showed the world what Vancouver was all about. And we got to remember, too, that Whistler is just not a Whistler event. It is also in Vancouver. It's in Richmond. Whistler is a BC event. It takes in Whistler and it takes in Vancouver. But Whistler definitely is the highlight of everything because that's where the majority of the events take place, and that's where everybody's going to go.
No, definitely. What do you think after the Olympics? After the Olympics have come and gone, do you think that the trend will continue, or this will help as far as real estate prices continuing to climb in Whistler?
Yeah, I think as we look, we've gone through a recession. And again, I look at the past. I'm a guy. I look at history. I look after the 81 crash where we went all the way down to $22 billion worth of sales. We worked our way up. And then, again, we've got the crash when we had the crash just in the last 3 years. At 2007, we had $163 billion worth of sales taking place. We dropped in 2008, just about the 130. Last year, we dropped about $42 billion worth of sales. So we came straight down, just like we did back after the 81 crash. And then we went straight back up, as I just mentioned before. So I think Whistler is going to climb. It's going to go gradually. I think we're going to not see a major effect for this year. I think next year we're going to start picking back up again. But I think that Whistler will be a good worldwide destination. People will come there because it's 12 months of the year. Summertime, wintertime, it's got facilities for everything.
And do you think it's still a good place to, if you can afford to buy a place or buy a piece of land somewhere around Whistler, do you think it's still a good investment?
It's very difficult around Whistler to buy anything because most of the land is being used up. But if you can buy anything in Whistler, yes, I still think it's a good price. It is high-priced property, but it is still a good investment, and it's a good place to buy. I don't think Whistler's going to go away. It's just a great place. Now with that Cedar Sky Highway, it's good access to Vancouver, and I think a lot of people are going to look at Whistler and say, that's such a good place to buy. And I think it's going to come from worldwide. Like I was saying before, we've got people from all over the world. 40 different countries now have bought properties in Whistler.
And when we talk about from all over the world as well, did we see any impact from the housing crisis in the United States as far as U.S. ownership in Whistler?
Well, the United States, is in trouble. They've got a pretty down market down there. But I think most of the people, I was looking at my numbers here a couple of days ago, most of the people are in a holding pattern. They weren't panicking and just getting rid of their houses. They're just sitting on them, and they're going to wait this thing through until we're out of the recession and climbing back up again. And even last year in Whistler, the first year, the crash happened around September 2008. It was a very quiet year, not only in Vancouver but in Whistler. And 2009, the first part was still very quiet, not many sales going through. And then the last part of 2009, sales took off, not only in Vancouver but in Whistler. And Whistler had some pretty good months there in the last part of the year, especially in November.
Any downside to this as far as obviously property taxes are more expensive in Whistler for residents that actually live there, not people that come from different countries to ski or take part in summer activities. Is there any downside to such a huge increase in value?
There's a downside in real estate. I've been in this business for 40 years, and there's always a downside to real estate. But, it's like you got to stay in a holding pattern. You don't panic, you don't sell. You just hold it. But I don't think it's going to replace Whistler. I mean, there's no way you can have a ski resort this close to a major city like Vancouver with international connections and not hold its price. Whistler's going to hold its price. Might go down a bit, but it'll climb back up again. And I think it's a great investment, especially when you see people coming in. Like even the Caribbean has 13 people buying Whistler. Mexico, 15 people own properties in Whistler, and the majority of the Whistler still is, held by Canadians, North Americans. About 9,200 people own property in Whistler. They're from North America. West Vancouver has got about, just under 2,000 people. West Vancouver, has about 700 people, and Vancouver itself has about 1,900 people that own property in Whistler. So before, we used to watch Whistler. A lot of people from the West End, Vancouver, bought 20 years ago. They had a condo there. They had a condo in Whistler. And now we're seeing the international traffic over the last 3 years coming in. And I think we're going to see that happening more and more. United States, I've been down the Vale, and I've been down some of those ski resorts down there. And I think what's going to happen is that the United States right now is a little nervous of where their economy is going to go. I think one of our other companies has sold quite a bit of property to Americans. Americans are still looking at Canada, at British Columbia. And British Columbia is going to be the best place in North America to be to suffer out a recession. It's just been, we're in a good position to last this thing through.
All right. Well, Rudy, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Well, thanks for having me.
Rudy Nielsen, he's the president and founder of Landcor Data Corporation, looking at real estate in Whistler.